There's something very specific that happens when a British person moves to Australia. You arrive with a whole mental image of a lifetime of documentaries, reality TV, and your mates who came here travelling on their gap year. And then slowly, reality starts dismantling that image piece by piece, and usually at the worst possible moment. So I've been living in Brisbane, Australia for a while now, and I can count 10 things that I was embarrassingly wrong about before I moved here. So today we're going through all 10 of them, so grab a cuppa or a water and let's get into it. And hey mate, welcome back. If you're new here, I'm Sam, a British actor and musician documenting my journey of rebuilding life in gorgeous Australia. Now throughout this video, you'll see the very clear mental image that I was brought up with of Australia. Now the main thing I watched was the UK I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, with generally British contestants. And it's funny that every Brit you meet seems to know either someone's daughter who's moved there or their mate did a gap year there. Number one, Australians wear cork hats. The British assumption of this is that the cork hat is an essential part of Australian attire. If you're a real Australian, you wear one of these because you're always going into bushland. You're probably doing really cool things out there, and Australians are just brave, warrior type people. They're not afraid of anything. They could grab a brown snake with their pinky finger and say, "Stop being a naughty little boy." And us Brits would go, "Bravo, mate. I could never do that." Whereas with Aussies, you wouldn't wear this unironically. I'll notice these when I go into a tourist shop in Sydney. Don't know why I'm still doing that after 2 years living here. And there'll be these really flimsy, poorly made cork hats, and you'll see all the tourists buying them. It's kind of like when tourists visit London and they'll buy like Beefeater merch. And if you're enjoying this video, consider hitting that like button. It genuinely helps out the channel. Thank you. Now, if you thought that was bad, the next one makes me sound way worse. Number two, Australians don't have proper cities, apart from Sydney. Also, I just want to say, these aren't the stereotypical assumptions of every Brit, just this Brit. So the British assumption is there's Sydney, they've got the Sydney Opera House, so it must be a pretty big city. And then the rest of the continent is outback, jungle, which I've been told never call it jungle, it's bushland, Sam. And there's the beaches. Yeah, that's pretty much what I thought of Australia for the majority of my life. Whereas the Australian reality, and I don't know how they've done this in such a short space of time, the major cities here are absolutely ginormous. Public transport systems are extensive, and the amount of like the retail stores and the amount of restaurants and the amount of cafes, and then all the cool things to do and tourist attractions. I'm like, how have you built this in the space of a few hundred years? Melbourne, it's a world-class city. They've perfected the coffee, that it's become the best coffee in the world. Partly thanks to the Italian and Greek immigration, of course. Perth is enormous and thriving, and then Adelaide has the gorgeous architecture and the beautiful Adelaide accent. Moving to Brisbane and discovering that it has better coffee culture, a better variety of cuisine done at a higher standard, and more going on than a lot of British cities. I'm like, how could I grow up with this stereotype of not being this metropolis spread out across the continent? Of course, there's a lot of inhabitable rural land in Australia, but when you get into the cities, you're like, oh, this is amazing. Speaking of something else that I was completely wrong about, number three, every Australian surfs and is a pro surfer. The British assumption is Australia is practically one long beach, and if you grew up on the coast, you not only know how to surf, you're like the best in the world at it. Whereas the Australian reality is Australia is huge. There's so many different environmental habitats here. It's almost like you experience every type of weather you could encounter on the planet in this one continent. So the Australian reality is that most Aussies, they live in the cities. I mean, Brisbane, the nearest beach is about an hour away. It's not exactly convenient if you want to go surfing regularly. And the majority of Australians I've met have never even tried surfing in their life, let alone do it regularly. Honestly though, it was kind of relieving because I'd mentally prepared myself for having to be on the beach every weekend with my pale, pasty white skin because I don't tan very well, and everyone laughing at me. And now I don't have to worry about that because I just go into the city. As a Brit living in Australia, one of the first rules I ever learned was if you don't understand something, just ask, don't guess. And honestly, that same rule applies to online security too. Because it's 2026, everything's gotten smarter, including the criminals. Right now, 1 in 3 Australians get scammed, hacked, or their data stolen. And half of them don't even know it until it's too late. That's why I use Bitdefender. It protects every device in my home, my phone, my laptop, All of it. Blocking dodgy sites, catching viruses before they land, and stopping scammers before they get anywhere near my lovely details. There are family plans if you want the whole household covered, and the VPN is built in so you can browse privately, and yes, even watch shows from back home. Crooks have evolved, so should we. So what does digital safety mean to you? I'm keen to hear your thoughts, and if you fancy getting a little bit more protected online, then click the link in the top of the description below. I used to think that Aussies eat kangaroos and bugs for breakfast. The further I get into this video, the more embarrassed I'm feeling. If you're not cringing yet, I hope you are now. Now, it can be a pretty wild country. They are one of the, I think, only countries that actually eats the animals on their coat of arms, is what I'm always told. The emu and the kangaroo. Do we need to eat them? Do we? It doesn't help growing up on UK I'm a Celebrity Get Me Out of Here, where they send British celebrities into Aussie bushland and they'll put them through bush tucker trials where they'll have to eat bugs and other parts of animals, use your imagination. Whereas the Australian reality is that it's just a normal Western diet really, cereal with milk. I mean, Vegemite on toast, which, let's be honest, it's very close to Marmite, but Marmite's better, you know it's true. Their fry-up here is very similar to an English fry-up. It's probably just a little bit healthier and less greasy, I would say. When I was 21, I moved to Japan for one of the biggest acting jobs of my life. And there was an Aussie girl in my cast, and trying to get to know her, I asked, "You're Aussie? What do you guys eat for breakfast?" And then there was this awkward moment of silence, and she kind of looked at me, a bit shocked, and she was like, the same things as you guys, mate? And I just wanted to die. I was so embarrassed. I cringe thinking about it now. But nothing prepared me for how wrong I was about number 5. It's incredibly dangerous because of the wildlife and plants. Look, we've heard this a million times over. The British and kind of global assumption of Australia, because of what Hollywood has fed us, is that everything wants to kill you. Snakes, spiders, trot bears, very real, and plants like the Gimpy. The whole country feels like a documentary about death by wildlife. Whereas the Australian reality is, yes, there is dangerous wildlife, there's very stingy jellyfish, but Aussies live completely normal lives around it. In fact, I don't know if I'm just lucky, never seen a snake in my whole 2 years living in Brisbane. Admittedly, it's a city. And if you do, like if it's a huntsman, the classic advice with Aussies, which I still can't get over, is give him a name, let him stay in your house, he'll eat the cockroaches. I'm not quite there yet.
It's your job.
When I left the UK to move to Australia, I was carrying the weight of all these assumptions that I didn't even know I had. And part of me feels like that's a bit of a British thing. We can be a bit sort of intellectually smug, like, yeah, we know how the world works. And then you actually travel and you're so humbled. And if you're visiting Australia, you have to come into it with an open mind, because the amount of Brits I've seen who will come here for a holiday or will move here permanently, and they will just complain about it being too hot or that they can't get this in the supermarket. But it's like, mate, you're thinking about it all wrong, because if you don't embrace the beautiful country that it is, you're not going to have a fun time. When you start opening your mind to this beautiful continent, you are going to love it. Number 6, every Aussie is obsessed with tanning. The British assumption is that Aussies, they adore the sun, they live for a tan, and no, they don't need to worry about hitting the tanning beds because they've got the gorgeous sunshine doing it for them. That last part's true. Australian reality is that the country has one of the highest rates of skin cancer in the world, and sun safety culture is enormous. The Slip Slop Slap campaign by Cancer Council has been going around for decades, and Australians are often far more cautious about the sun than us Brits. And it's shocking that when I visit the UK, how relaxed Brits are on a high UV day in the UK, or when they go to a very high UV country like Spain on their summer holiday. They'll either not wear sunscreen because they want to tan faster, or they'll wear a really low SPF sunscreen, SPF 15, which I'll get Aussies comment on these videos saying, I didn't even know that existed, mate. But where this comes from with Brits is that there's the running joke that we get about 12 days of sunshine in the UK, and the rest of the time it's miserable grey drizzle. And so yes, when the sun comes out, men are whacking their tops off, we're going into the beer gardens and we're drinking cans of cider that we bought from the supermarket and just living it up. But if only we could have the same sun safety culture Australia has, we'd be far more healthier when it comes to our skin. But number 7 completely flipped another stereotype I had. Aussies drink more than Brits. That's what I thought. The British assumption is that Australians are legendary drinkers. They're loud, rowdy, beer in hand at all times, and no, the truth is that's just British people. It turns out Australians, they don't outdrink Brits because they have a much healthier relationship with alcohol than we do, but the culture around it is notably less toxic than the UK. There's less of the you have to get absolutely obliterated to have a good time energy. Pub culture feels a lot less hostile, more friendly, it's warmer, and it's more socially acceptable to get a soft drink at the bar. You would not believe, in my early 20s, the amount I would get ripped into if I ordered a Diet Coke at the bar instead of a pint of beer or a double vodka Coke. You would not believe it. Whereas in Australia, you can get something like a lemon lime bitters, you can get a lemonade, Diet Coke, creaming soda, and no one judges you for it. Also, if somebody offers you a drink here, like a beer, glass of wine, and you say, no, I'm good, thanks, it's none of this, go on, just have one, just do it. It's like, yeah, no worries, mate. Whereas in the UK, it's getting better as time goes on, but there is quite a lot of peer pressure. Like, come on, mate, you know, have a laugh, lighten up, you know, be like one of us. It's not good. But number 8, I literally couldn't have been more wrong about. Everywhere is dusty and red or a jungle. The British assumption is that Australia is a scorched red outback, whereas the Aussie reality, like I mentioned before, it has Mediterranean-style coastlines, alpine regions with vast forests and, you know, places that get quite a lot of snow, incredibly lush national parks and green rolling hills. The landscape variety here, it's paradise. But the last 2 on these lists, I still can't believe I thought. Number 9, I thought everyone knows each other. The British assumption is, although I knew the continent itself was huge, I knew its population was much smaller than the British one. So it feels like a tighter community. You'll bump into people more. You might make some friends in Brisbane, and then the next year you're in Sydney, and they're all there as well, for some magical reason. And plus, 26 million people is still a huge amount of people. And while the regional differences in the UK are probably more noticeable, as we've uncovered in videos like the Perth one, save that to watch after this video, there are regional differences in accents, in social activities and hobbies, how the architecture of each town and city looks. An Australian Queenslander compared to an Australian Victorian are very different people. So it's not this like small tight-knit nation, although there feels like there's a lot more camaraderie here in the community, and maybe people are a little bit more patriotic about Australia. You're not going to bump into that person you met in Perth last year and now you're based in Brisbane. It's very unlikely. And this final stereotype took me a long time to shake until I actually moved here. Number 10, Australia isn't a real place to build an acting career. The British assumption is if you're serious about building an acting career, you either move to London, or if you can get in, you move to LA and you do pilot season. In fact, you'd see huge Australian stars like Hugh Jackman and Cate Blanchett move internationally for their acting careers, and you'd think, oh, maybe Australia just does Neighbours and Home from Away. That was because of my lack of research. Whereas the Australian reality is that the performing arts industry here is rapidly growing, especially TV and film, with a lot of Hollywood studios choosing Australia, especially the Gold Coast, for sound stages and on-set locations. Australia is consistently producing both regional theatre and mainstream theatre and musical theatre that sells a lot of tickets. It's a really exciting place to be if you're a performer. And honestly, this one changed how I think about everything, because it's been my childhood dream to be a consistently working actor and musician. And here we are, trying to make it work. But if you want to keep the adventure going, then YouTube thinks you're going to love this video. So click that. And if you want to subscribe, click my little face here. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.